As usual, the season began with Monte Carlo, and for the second year running, the main base was in Valence, south of Lyon, in an attempt to find the snow and ice that make this rally such a unique challenge. The rally would run over 4 days, culminating with a super special around part of the F1 circuit in Monaco itself. And to make it even trickier, the organisers decided a couple of night stages would be a good way to start proceedings. The mixture of dark and ice made this a treacherous start as reigning world champion Sébastien Loeb led the crews into the stages. The Frenchman's won this event 4 times in the last 6 years, and once again he set a stunning pace, taking the lead from the very first stage. Others struggled in the slippery dark conditions, Chris Atkinson desperately trying to keep his Subaru on the road. Privateer Conrad Rautenbach was less successful, becoming the first casualty. Jari-Matti Latvala, making his debut in the full works team, was the first to suffer from the new tyre rules, which have banned the run-flat tyre mousse. He had to stop to change a puncture and lost over 3 minutes. Day 2 brought some welcome daylight for the drivers, but no one could match the pace of the champion. Lowe pulled away on what were now dry tarmac roads. His teammate Danny Sordo took second spot, also enjoying the grippier conditions. That left Ford's new number 1 Mikko Hirvonen in third, unable to match the searing pace of the Citroens. But on day 3, Sordo had turbo problems, bringing his rally to an early end, something the Spaniard was clearly unhappy about. Suzuki's debut proved to be as tricky as the rally. Both cars suffered minor technical problems on the opening 2 days, but still set some decent times. Tony Gardemeister's engine started to overheat on the 3rd day, forcing the Finn's retirement to save the engine. But it was better news for PG Anderson, who set a 5th fastest stage time and finished the rally in the points in 8th. The biggest battle of the weekend was for 3rd place between Subaru's Chris Atkinson and Stobart's Francois Duval. Duval was making a one-off appearance for the Ford team and started the final day 20 seconds behind Atkinson. Over the next 5 stages, the Belgian whittled that down to just 1.1 seconds as the pair headed into the Super Special. Incredibly, they set identical times, handing Atkinson only his 2nd ever podium finish.
Chris, end of Rally Monte Carlo, end of this Super Special, and you've kept that 3rd place, some drive.
Well, it's been tough. Francois is an awesome driver and he's been pushing hard today, and we just busted our asses, and we got there in the end, which is perfect for the team, Subaru.
Conrad Rautenbach showed how small the margins are between admiration and humiliation as he attempted his first ever run through the streets of Monte Carlo. But the rally was all about the world champion Loeb. He led from start to finish and became the first ever driver to win the Monte 5 times. His winning margin, an awesome 2.5 minutes. Mikko Hirvonen took 2nd spot, his best ever finish in Monte, and a great start to his season. Petter Solberg never found the confidence in himself, his Subaru or his tyres to push any harder, but would eventually finish in 5th, becoming another to score their best ever result in Monte. Shichigali, driving his first full-time season for the Stobart Ford team, finished in a solid 6th position despite the lack of time behind the wheel of his Focus. Confirmation then of Loeb's dominance, claiming his 37th career win. Atkinson took 3rd by 1.1 seconds from Duval. Petter Solberg was happy just to score some points on a rally that's never been kind to him. Loeb's 10 points give him the familiar top spot in the Drivers' Championship. PG Anderson and Suzuki delighted to be in the points on their debut season. In the manufacturers, Citroën take an early lead. Danny Sordo super rallying and picking up 1 point for the team for his efforts. It's also a better than expected start for Subaru with a 10-point haul. It was supposed to be snow and ice, but unseasonably high temperatures meant there was only a small snow covering and even less ice. This meant problems for Loeb in his 100th WRC outing. Being first car on the road, he had to clear what little snow there was for the drivers following him. The Frenchman was losing time on the opening stages. And then, on stage 3, he pushed too hard, clipping the melting snow, which sucked him in, flipping his C4. The car was beached, and it took over 3 minutes to get out, damaging the engine and the clutch in the process. To make matters worse, there was only a remote service to carry out repairs. And despite desperate attempts, Loeb was forced to retire on the road section, his car down to half its normal power. He did Super Rally, but things went from bad to worse for the champion as he was pulled over for speeding by the local police and then had to retire for the second time with more engine problems. Chris Atkinson, on a high after his third place in Monte Carlo, was another to be caught out by the melting snow. He smashed through a snowbank, beaching the car and losing over 15 minutes, ending any chance of a decent result in Sweden. Suzuki's PG Anderson was flying the flag for the local supporters, but he too hit trouble. His engine expired on the opening day, bringing his rally to a very premature end.
Vänster 4 minus 120, håller höger till vänster 3 plus in.
Moava made his debut in the Citroën C4, but struggled from the off. He went off twice and even managed to park his car in a stream. There were no such worries for the Fords. Jari-Matti Latvala made the most of his later starting position to blast through the clearing roads and into an early lead. Although even he had a couple of close calls. His teammate Mikko Hirvonen could only look on in admiration as his fellow Finn won 6 of the first 8 stages to lead by 48 seconds. Hirvonen quickly settled for second after Loeb's departure, happy to take another 8 points for second, which would give him the lead in the Drivers' Championship. As the Works Fords battled for the top spot, so the Stobart Fords of Henning Solberg and Gigi Gali fought for third. Henning Solberg was pushing hard, but he lost third after a puncture on day 2. Worse though was to follow as he tried to regain the place. The Norwegian pushed too hard into a left-hander, smashing into a bridge and ending his rally. That left his teammate Gigi Gali in third, the Italian cruising to the finish to claim his second ever podium place, his last coming back in 2006 in Argentina. Petter Solberg, buoyed by his 5th place in Monte Carlo, once again decided that caution was the best way forward. And this time, the Norwegian was rewarded with 4th place. Britain's Matthew Wilson took the same approach and worked his way as high as 5th, but on the final day, throttle problems forced him to retire, just 2 stages from a fantastic result.
What do I do? I don't know. Do I have to reset it, maybe?
His demise was another youngster's success. 18-year-old Andreas Mikkelsen happily took both Wilson's 5th, as well as his tag as the youngest ever driver to score points in a World Rally event. Another young man on a mission was Citroën's Dani Sordo. The Spaniard was 60th after the first stage, having taken a 5-minute penalty for replacing his engine after Monte Carlo. Incredibly, he fought his way back up the leaderboard to finish 6th. But the rally was all about Jari-Matti, as he became the youngest driver to win a WRC event, breaking Henri Toivonen's record set back in 1980. It was an astonishing drive in only his 2nd event with the full Works team.
Jari-Matti, this day will stay with you for the rest of your life. So the youngest ever winner of a World Rally.
The guy who was before me was Henri Toivonen, and he was 24 years old, and he is a big idol of me. And In my secret mind, I have been thinking that I want to beat this record, and actually we did it, and we did it here in Sweden. It's unbelievable feeling.
Latvala's winning margin over his teammate almost 1 minute. Gali made it a Ford 1-2-3. In the driver's standings, Mikko Hirvonen's 2 second places give him a 6-point lead in the championship. Loeb and Latvala are tied on 10 points with a win apiece. In the manufacturers, Ford's 18 points haul in Sweden propels them to the top of the leaderboard, while Citroën drop from 1st to 4th. Next, the crews headed west to Mexico for the first gravel event of the season, and after his record-breaking exploits in Sweden, it was time for young Jari-Matti to prove it wasn't a one-off. And to everyone's surprise and in some cases annoyance, Latvala led from the off. The Finn, full of confidence and making the most of a nice clean line, finished the opening day with a 10-second lead. His nearest rival was Loeb, who was struggling to understand how Latvala was still beating him.
I don't know, I think I do really good stages. No mistake, perfect line, very fast everywhere. The time is not here, so I don't know.
Latvala's teammate Mikko Hirvonen was struggling as first car on the road. He then had a series of punctures which caused him to go off. He made it back on, but finished the day down in 5th. There were plenty of others to fare worse. Citroën's number 2, Danny Sordo, didn't even make it through the first stage, broken steering, ending his chances. Gigi Gali in the Stobart Ford drifted wide, hitting a rock so hard that it damaged the roll cage, leading to his exclusion. Peter Solberg was going well in his Subaru until he hit a stray dog, causing him both clutch and brake problems and costing him precious time. He would finish the rally down in 12th place. Suzuki had an event to forget as PG Anderson retired with engine failure after the 3rd stage. Tony Gardemeister did at least make it to the 2nd day, but he too had engine problems and retired with a blown head gasket. As rally leader, Latvala had to sweep the way on the 2nd day. The Finn struggled and lost the lead to the chasing Loeb. Worse was to follow as the Ford suffered a broken turbo pipe, losing him both power and time and dropping him down to 3rd overall, a position he held to the finish. Chris Atkinson was another to benefit, taking 2nd from the ailing Latvala. He did have to overcome intercom problems, even swapping crash helmets with his co-driver Prevo to help him hear the notes. Nevertheless, he put in a near faultless performance to keep 2nd, his best ever finish to a rally. Henning Solberg had battled hard and worked his way into 4th. But a puncture on the final day saw him lose the place to Hirvonen. So, after all that, Loeb cruised to his 2nd win of the season, but even he had a small scare as he almost stopped a lap too early in the super special stage at the end of the rally. Loeb, Atkinson and Latvala took the podium places. Mikko Hirvonen stole 4th from Henning Solberg after the Norwegian's puncture, while Britain's Matt Wilson finished a creditable 6th. And the next challenge for the crews was back in the Americas for a classic test, Rally Argentina. Hirvonen arrived as championship leader by a single point. Latvala was third, 4 points behind Loeb for what would be a dramatic 3 days. But after the sunshine of Mexico, the weather was less than welcoming as the crews headed into the Argentinian Pampas. Mikko Hirvonen was first into stage 1 and set a blistering time, almost 50 seconds faster than anyone else, including a bewildered world champion. But Hirvonen's joy was short-lived as he clipped a rock, breaking his steering and bringing his rally to a frustrating end. His teammate Latvala also started brightly, beating Loeb into third spot. But on stage 2, he too came unstuck. That roll cost him 9 minutes and he dropped way out of contention. That left Loeb out on his own with a massive lead of 1.5 minutes at the end of the opening day. The Frenchman on course to break yet another record by becoming the first man to win Argentina 4 times. But even he was less than happy with the conditions as he struggled to control his C4.
I would like to see the man who decides that we don't be allowed to cut the tire. I would like him to be in the car because it's completely crazy and very dangerous.
Behind him were the Subarus of Chris Atkinson and Petter Solberg, who were battling for second. Atkinson was another driver to suffer in the tricky conditions, spinning early on. Petter passed his teammate on day 2 and soon pulled away from the Australian. But Solberg's luck once again deserted him as his car ground to a halt on the final day. Not that he was to receive much consolation from his brother. That allowed Atkinson to claim another second place finish, just reward for the Australians' more measured approach this season. Gigi Gali was another to suffer through a lack of fortune. He was running 4th, but then an exhaust problem saw fumes pouring into the car. And to add insult to injury, the mechanics weren't able to repair the car in service, forcing the Italian to retire on day 2. That handed Danny Sordo 4th overall, which on the final day turned into 3rd with Petter's retirement. This would be the Spaniard's 2nd podium of the season so far, and his 5th on gravel, illustrating Danny's development as an all-round driver. Henning Solberg, like his brother, suffered some cruel luck. He broke his suspension in dramatic style on day 2. But then, unbelievably, broke it again the following day. At least the Norwegian was able to see the funny side. Matt Wilson was another to have an eventful rally. He battled his way up to 5th overall despite similar exhaust problems to Gali. But it all came to an end for the Brit on day 2 as he also broke his suspension. After all that, Conrad Rautenbach in a privateer Citroën C4 eased his way through the stages to claim an incredible 4th place. One man to avoid all the drama was world champion Loeb. He cruised the victory by a massive 2.5 minutes for a record-breaking 4th consecutive win in Argentina. Chris Atkinson took 2nd and Danny Sordo 3rd, whilst Mikko Hirvonen fought back to claim an impressive 5th place under the Super Rally rules. So Loeb's 3rd win of the season put him back at the head of the drivers' table, 5 points clear of Hirvonen. Chris Atkinson's consistency moved him into 3rd above Latvala. Citroën's 16-point haul saw them reduce the gap to Ford to just 3 points. This was the first time the WRC had visited the Middle East, and Jordan provided a spectacular venue with a host of stunning backdrops, including the world-famous Petra. The rally itself boasted more amazing scenery in the shape of the Dead Sea and a service park carved into the side of the hill overlooking this famous water. Championship leader Loeb started proceedings, but this meant clearing the loose surface for those behind. A small off proved just how tricky running first on the road was, even for the world champion. Mikko Hirvonen was next into the stages, and he too was struggling for grip in his bid to make the most of his small advantage over Loeb. And Ford's number one was incredibly lucky to survive that massive moment. Chris Atkinson was third on the road after second place finishes in Mexico and Argentina, but he too struggled to get to grips with the new stages. But he did at least fare better than his teammate Petter Solberg, whose season of misfortune continued.
We're on fire. We're on fire.
He broke his front suspension, which then caught fire mid-stage, forcing the crew to stop to extinguish the flames. But it proved to be in vain, as the pair were forced to retire on the road section. PG Anderson was looking to have a decent run for Suzuki after technical problems have blighted his season so far, but he too misjudged the grip levels and crashed out. Worse was to follow for the team, as Tony Gardemeister then retired with engine failure. The opening day drama didn't end there. Gigi Gali slid wide, clipped a bank and lost his spare wheel. Sadly for the Italian, he also damaged the rear differential and the exhaust, forcing him to retire.
Okay, we slide a little bit and I think we touched something on the rear. Okay.
After all that, Danny Sordo stormed into the lead, benefiting from his road position and the fact that the stages were smooth and similar to his favoured surface tarmac. But Loeb soon hit back to finish just over a second behind Sordo, and on day two, it didn't take the Frenchman long to snatch the lead from his teammate. He then set about establishing a big gap between himself and his rivals. After stage 11, he was 34 seconds ahead and looking unstoppable. But a freak accident on a road section brought his rally to a most unlikely end, as Loeb's Citroën ploughed head-on into the Citroën of Conrad Rautenbach. Using Virtual Spectator, you can see just how this happened. The access road into the stage joined the access road out of the finish, and that's exactly where the pair met. That left the two Fords of Latvala and Hirvonen once again chasing Danny Sordo, and with just 6 seconds separating the three of them, this was set to be a tight finish. Both Latvala and Hirvonen soon passed Sordo, who was still clearing the road for the chasing pack. But on the final stage of day two, tactics came into play as both Fords slowed in the stage so that they wouldn't be first on the road for the final day. Day three was set to be the longest of the rally, and sadly for Sordo, he was ahead of both Fords and once again on sweeping duties. The two Finns duly passed Sordo, but then disaster struck for Latvala as he suffered a broken rear suspension. But it was even worse for his co-driver, as the car collapsed on him as he tried to carry out repairs in the road section. Fortunately, he was uninjured, but the pair dropped from first to eighth. Mikko Hirvonen gratefully inherited the lead and guided his car home to post his first win of the season, and in turn retake the lead in the title race from Loeb. So, confirmation of Hirvanen's victory. Sordo's second was his best finish of the season so far, whilst Atkinson claims his fourth podium in the first 5 events. Mikko Hirvonen retook the lead in the drivers' title race, 5 points ahead of Loeb. Atkinson's third-place finish moved him to within 2 points of the Frenchman. In the manufacturers, Ford extended their lead over Citroën by 4 points. After the desert heat of Jordan, the crews headed back to Europe to the beautiful Mediterranean island of Sardinia for Rally Italy. This would prove to be another gripping event, as the new road order rules would once again add to the excitement of the rally. On the opening day, Loeb set off at a blistering pace, establishing a comfortable lead over his rivals. Hirvonen, as championship leader, struggled as first car on the road, the loose gravel costing him grip and time. He did manage to finish the day in fourth, but almost a minute behind the leader Loeb. His teammate Latvala had a better starting position and took the rally lead on the first stage, but then he pushed a little too hard, whacking the bank and puncturing the rear left tyre. That dropped him to 7th, over a minute and a half behind Loeb and seemingly out of contention. But day 2 saw a complete turnaround in results. Loeb was now first on the uncleared roads, and he was struggling to set good times. Loeb's teammate Sordo began the day in second, but he too had his problems on the loose gravel. As for the Finns behind, they were literally flying. Hirvonen gradually ate into the time set by the Citroëns, and after 3 stages, he'd taken second from Sordo. But the most incredible run came from Latvala, who won all 3 stages and jumped from 7th to 3rd, dropping Sordo to 4th. And it didn't stop there for the younger Finn, as he went on to win all 6 stages, incredibly ending the day tied on exactly the same time as his teammate Hirvonen. It was an amazing fight back as both Finns reeled in Loeb. Hirvonen took almost half a minute from the world champion, whilst Latvala took a staggering minute out of Loeb. That meant the pair began the final day 29 seconds behind the Frenchman, and once again, Seb was first out and clearing the way for the Finns. At least this time, they were right behind him. Latvala was second on the road due to his win on the first stage of the rally, and he beat Sebastian by 5 seconds on the opening stage. Hirvonen was next, and he was in determined mood, taking a massive 10 seconds out of Seb, and suddenly the gap was down to 19, and he really believed he had a chance.
We had quite a few moments and we hit the fence in one corner, but no, this is a fantastic fight. Now I really love it.
But on the next stage, Loeb dug deep and produced a blinding time, beating Hirvonen by almost 4 seconds. And over the next 2 stages, he managed the time loss to Mikko, forcing the Finn to back off and accept second spot, whilst he bagged his 40th career win.
It was important for me to score some good points here because Mikko is leading the championship. He will still be leading. So, but okay, it was difficult rally, frustrating because I had to push a lot all the time, and the times were not so good because we were cleaning the road and we were losing a lot of time for that.
For the rest of the field, it was also a fairly dramatic event. 18-year-old Andreas Mikkelsen started well, taking 5th spot on the very first stage, but it all came to a very sudden end. Italian Gigi Gali started well, but then lost time with a puncture after clouting the bank in the second stage. He fought back to take a creditable 4th. Danny Sordo was as high as 2nd, but just couldn't match the pace of the Fords. First Hirvonen and then Latvala passed him, dropping him down to 4th, which he then lost to Gali. Peter Solberg also started brightly. He was 3rd at the end of day 1. But it all went wrong for the Norwegian, who lost confidence in the car and then had the bonnet fly up mid-stage, forcing him to stop, only to have to pull over again in the same stage to change a puncture. He clearly wasn't happy.
It's undrivable.
But the off of the rally most definitely went to junior driver Florian Nigel, who gave his co-driver the fright of his life. Confirmation then of Loeb's victory, holding off the Fords of Hirvonen and Latvala. Gigi Gali claimed fourth ahead of Citroen's Danny Sordo. Chris Atkinson's podium run came to an end. He was sixth. The next event, Greece, saw the introduction of the all-new hatchback Subaru Impreza and marked the end of an era as the saloon version was finally edged out. Since its debut in the championship in 1993, the Subaru Impreza has become a WRC icon. Rally means Subaru, and Subaru means rally. It's had many ups, 3 manufacturer championships, 3 drivers' titles, and 46 WRC wins. And a few downs. But what has never changed is that traditional saloon shape, but not anymore. Bring on the hatchback. Here's Chris Atkinson to tell us more.
Hi everyone, here we are with a new car. It's a completely new shape for us. It's based on a 5-door hatch. The old car was a sedan. Obviously with the hatch and the new streamlined shape, it's a lot more aerodynamic, which is good for the stages, good for the high-speed section. Got a new rear wing, which fits in with the hatch design, and hopefully that'll give us extra speed. The car's also got a completely new livery with the yellow completely gone now. We've got a black on the back with silver blending into the side. I reckon it looks really cool. It also flows onto the side of the car with a completely new design. This is based on the corporate logo. So just Subaru down the side, no more yellow in the S, and completely new back to go with a new car, which I reckon looks sweet. A few things under the bonnet have changed as well, not just the outside. Engine's very similar, it's always been strong in the Subaru, so that will continue. We've got a new gearbox, new suspension, and completely new weight distribution, which means lower centre of gravity, better balance, and a better handling car. Hopefully that works well for us here in Greece.
The car had a lot to live up to, and it could not have had a tougher debut.
It's probably the most difficult event of the year, but we're not frightened of challenges. And let's not forget, the Subaru Impreza is the most successful rally car of modern times. It's got more wins behind it than any other car. So let's hope this car follows that tradition. I'm very confident it will do.
It's still a long way to go with to get it absolutely up there 100%, but we are doing really well to come out with the car so early as we have done. Now we just have to work further with the car to get it back for winning.
It was a hot and rocky Greece rally that lay in wait for the new Subaru and the rest of the teams. Mikko Hirvonen, as championship leader, was first into the stages and once again clearing the way for the rest. It was a struggle, but he was at least in fourth after the opening stages. But there were more problems to come for Mikko when he hit a rock in stage 6, damaging his suspension. He lost 50 seconds, limping through the Super Special and dropped to 7th. But all eyes were firmly on the new Subaru as the car took on possibly the toughest event of the season. Chris Atkinson was the first to head into the stages. He started with the 6th fastest time, but his luck ran out when he hit the same rock as Hirvonen, breaking his suspension and forcing him to retire. For his teammate Petter Solberg, his run of bad luck seemed to have come to an end. He was 5th after the opening stage and had a close call on the next, but survived. By the end of the opening day, he was up to 3rd, and the Solberg smile was back. Gigi Gali and the Stobart Ford had a nightmare first day. He also hit a rock, broke the suspension, and had to retire. Once again, though, it was Ford number 2, Jari-Matti Latvala, who set the early pace. The Finn flew through the opening stages to take the lead of the rally, but as in Sardinia, it was short-lived. He punctured a tyre in stage 4 and dropped to 3rd. And worse was to come as he hit the same rock as Hirvonen and Atkinson in stage 6, also breaking his suspension. He carried out repairs but could only limp through the Super Special, losing over a minute and dropping to 6th. For Loeb, it was business as usual. He struggled for grip on the opening stages, but took advantage of Latvala's misfortune, taking the lead in the afternoon. And he continued on day 2, despite being first on the road.
I couldn't go much faster. I think I make some good lines for the other behind, so okay, what can we do? We have to push and we will see.
But even the world champion isn't immune from a bit of bad luck, and on stage 9 he lost over 30 seconds with a puncture, and with it, the lead of the rally. That left his teammate Danny Sordo as the new leader. The Spaniard then extended his lead before disaster struck. He punctured 2 tyres and with only 1 spare was forced to crawl through the final stage, with one of the damaged wheels finishing on just the rim. He lost over 4 minutes and dropped to 7th. There were more dramas for the super rallying Mikko Hirvonen when he broke a brake disc and damaged the suspension. He struggled through the stage but held up Petter Solberg in his dust trail. Fortunately for Petter, he didn't lose too much time as he pushed hard towards the end to make sure he took 2nd from the ailing Sordo, and Mikko did at least say sorry at the stop control. And there was more good news for the Solberg family as Henning put in a steady performance, working his way up the leaderboard as others tumbled off it. And Jari-Matti Latvala was one of the tumblers. After an early morning charge that saw him climb as high as 4th, he then had a turbo problem he couldn't fix. It cost him over 4 minutes and dropped him to 9th. So day 3, and surely there couldn't be any more drama. But sadly for Henning Solberg there was. An intermittent electrical fault meant his engine suddenly lost power. His dreams of standing next to his brother on the podium were left in tatters as he dropped from 3rd to 8th. Mikko Hirvonen was there to make the most of the Norwegian's misfortune to claim 3rd, a position that had looked unlikely after all the Finns' dramas over the weekend. Privateer Irmo Ava took the steady approach, but even he had to stop to change a puncture on day 2. Nevertheless, his persistence paid off as he finished 4th, his best ever result. Out front and untouchable once more was Sebastian Loeb. He picked his way through the final stages to claim his 5th win of the season, which was enough to give him back the lead in the championship. But the biggest celebrations were left to Subaru, as Petter Solberg brought the all-new Impreza home in 2nd place, an unbelievable result on such a tough rally and with a totally new car. Confirmation then of Loeb's win. Danny Sordo fought back to claim 5th, whilst Brit Matthew Wilson avoided trouble and claimed an impressive 6th. So after 7 rounds, Loeb led the Drivers' Championship by 1 point over Hirvonen. Atkinson's failure saw him drop back from the leading pair. In the manufacturers' race, Citroën closed the gap to just 2 points to rivals Ford. Subaru's 8 points helped them pull away from Stobart. So after 7 rounds, Loeb led the title race by a single point from Hirvonen as the crews headed to Turkey. It was the 6th gravel event in a row, and once again, road sweeping would be a major issue. And that was bad news for leader Loeb, who was first on the road. He struggled for grip and found himself down in 6th after the first 5 stages. Just to prove the advantage of running only 1 place behind Loeb, Ford's Mikko Hirvonen took the early lead of the rally. He was helped by his teammates' misfortune. Latvala hit a bank, punctured a tyre and lost almost 30 seconds. But Jari-Matti soon hit back, moving from 14th to 3rd overall, and he eventually took the rally lead from Hirvonen, only to lose it again with yet another puncture. Privateer Ermoava also made the most of his starting position, moving into 4th after the second stage. But it all came to a dramatic end for this promising Estonian when he clattered a rock, destroying his suspension. Italian Gigi Galli had the most eventful start. He was 3rd after stage 2, but received a 10-second penalty for being late into stage 3 after stopping on the road section to repair a damaged rear bumper. He then retook 3rd, only to smash a window, filling his car with dust. For the all-new Subaru Impreza, it was a mixed start. Chris Atkinson struggled early on and then damaged his suspension, forcing him to retire. Petter Solberg fared a little better, but struggled to match the pace of the top boys. He ended the opening day in 6th. But the big talking point came in the final stage of the day, as Hirvonen and Latvala decided to slow down near the finish so they wouldn't be first on the road for day 2. Hirvonen dropped down to 5th, whilst Jari-Matti dropped to 3rd. That promoted Loeb to the top spot and made him road sweep once again. And it soon proved to be a masterstroke by the 4 drivers as they hunted down the Frenchman on the next day. By the second stage, Hirvonen had retaken the lead, some 14 seconds ahead of Loeb. Latvala couldn't take as much time starting 3rd on the road, but he still passed Loeb to take 2nd overall. Gigi Galli had also slowed on the previous day to give himself a better road position, and he took 3rd from Loeb. But engine problems saw him drop to 8th. And sadly, the Italian was later forced to retire due to ill health, suffering from exhaustion and dehydration. That handed Loeb 3rd, but it was little consolation to the Frenchman as he watched the Fords disappear into the distance. By the end of the day, he was 34 seconds behind rally leader Hirvonen and 18 behind Latvala. The only bonus for Seb was he wouldn't have to run first on the road on the final day. Mikko was first into Sunday's stages, and a stall, a sign that he was feeling the pressure, knowing Loeb and Latvala would be chasing hard. Jari-Matti was next into the stages, and he too had half an eye on the chasing Loeb, but he was also looking forward and setting his sights on Hirvonen's top spot. He saw Mikko stall and with it his chance. He beat his teammate by 8.5 seconds, reducing the gap to just 7.5. So that left Loeb to put down his marker. He pushed as hard as he could, beating Hirvonen by 7.9 seconds, but he couldn't beat the awesome time set by Latvala. But Hirvonen wasn't about to surrender. Pumped up after that stall, he blasted through the next stage, beating Latvala by over 5 seconds. With 131-kilometre stage to go, Loeb was 25 seconds behind Hirvonen and 13 behind Latvala. The 4-time world champion soon realised that this was a challenge too far, even for him, and he backed off near the end, settling for 3rd. That left 4 very happy Finns to celebrate at the end of the stage.
It's a great way to end off the first half of the season. I really didn't think that we would be in this position, and I always said at the start of the year these young drivers would be better in the second half of the season, and I really still believe that they're only going to get better.
So after an intriguing finish, Hirvonen managed to hang on for his 2nd win of the season. Danny Sordo was the only mover on the final day, taking 4th from Henning Solberg. Mikko's win took him back to the top of the Drivers' Championship table, 3 points ahead of Loeb. Latvala also moved up, taking 3rd from Chris Atkinson. In the manufacturers, Ford's maximum points haul gave them a 9-point lead over rival Citroën. Subaru kept 3rd ahead of Stobart. So Mikko's lead was just 3 points as he and Jari-Matti Latvala headed to their home event full of hope and expectation. Only 3 non-Scandinavians had ever won Rally Finland, and it was a record these Finns were keen to preserve. But for Latvala, it was short-lived. On only the 3rd stage, he clipped a rock he failed to spot on the recce, which damaged the steering. This then broke a couple of 100 metres later, catapulting the stricken Ford into the ditch and out of the rally.
Hey.
Just before the straight there is like a farm, and you go to the farm like flat out, like a little right and a flat left, and it seems that there was a rock, and there was a rock, big rock on the right hand side. I didn't see it, and I just hit that. When I come into the straight, I felt that something is not correct, and I started to feel that is it the problem, the tire or wheel, and suddenly just the steering broke, and we went off the road because of that. So that's why the car is parked on the ditch.
It wasn't much better for Hirvonen. He lives locally, and try as he might, he just couldn't match the pace of his rival Loeb. The Frenchman led from the off, and by the end of the first day had accumulated a lead of 14.5 seconds. It was an impressive start on a rally that traditionally favours local knowledge. His teammate Danny Sordo is an ever-growing force on gravel, and he found himself in third after Lavala's retirement. But it wasn't a position he could hold on to, as Henning Solberg hit his stride in the afternoon stages on the opening day and snatched third from the Spaniard. But on day two, Henning had lost that flowing feeling, and with it the fast stage times. That opened the door for his Stobart teammate Gigi Gali. The Italian didn't need a second invitation and snatched third from the Norwegian on stage 12. Gali was pushing his car to the limit, enjoying these lightning-fast roads, but a wrong pace note meant he took a big sweeping left-hander just a little too quickly, with catastrophic results. Gali's off, showing what a fine line there is between flat-out speed and disaster in Finland.
Just we slide off in one. It was a corner on the crest, and it was too long than expected, and we went a little bit off and roll, and you can see.
Back at the front, Hirvonen was still pushing as hard as he could. The Finn closed to just over 11 seconds behind Loeb and looked to be hunting down the Frenchman. But Loeb responded as the pair traded fast this time throughout the second day, and it was the world champion who once again came out of the exchanges in better shape with a lead of over 18 seconds. Chris Atkinson in his new Subaru was a man on a mission on day two, moving from 9th to 3rd. But with a gap of just 1 second between himself and Danny Sordo in 4th, this was far from over. Sordo started day 3 on a charge, but with team pressure to score points, he soon decided to accept 4th and backed off. Peter Solberg had a few small technical problems, but once again he had to play second fiddle to his junior teammate Atkinson. He did at least finish 6th overall. Matti Rantanen entered as a privateer in his first outing in a WRC car in a World Championship event. The 27-year-old put in a steady drive to claim an impressive 7th place. Suzuki had made improvements to the car over the summer break, and they looked to have paid off for Finnish driver Tony Gardemeister. He finished 8th despite this scare and claimed his first driver points since Sweden.
Vasen eri plus jarru 9, oikea K-lyhyt, ei. Menikö käsi?
Back at the top of the leaderboard, the battle suddenly looked open again, and Loeb made a small error on the penultimate stage of the rally. That saw his lead reduced to 11.8 seconds with 1 stage to go. But the world champion dug deep to hold off the charging Hirvonen to claim his first ever win in Finland.
Winning Finland is an incredible feeling, because I think it's for sure it's one of the most mythic rally, but it's especially the most difficult rally and most technical and fast rally. So to win here in front of some Finnish drivers, it's really a good feeling.
Loeb joined Carlos Sainz, Didier Auriol and Marco Martin as the only non-Scandinavians to claim victory in Finland. So Loeb's winning margin just 9 seconds. Chris Atkinson held on to third for his 5th podium finish of the season and the 2nd for the new Impreza. Sordo's 4th place made this a great weekend for Citroën. Next up, Rally Germany, and after Finland, Hirvonen's lead was down to a single point. Both Chris Atkinson and Danny Sordo moved up a place as Latvia's Finland retirement saw him drop from 3rd to 5th. This was the first proper tarmac test of the season and one that Sebastian Loeb had dominated, winning it every year since the event joined the championship back in 2002. And it wasn't long before the Frenchman was out front once again. He was simply untouchable, pulling out a lead of almost 20 seconds, seemingly without even breaking sweat. Mikko Hirvonen had done some extra tarmac driving training, and it looked like it was paying off as he edged ahead of Citroën's asphalt ace Danny Sordo on the first afternoon to take 2nd spot. Sordo, though, responded in emphatic style on day 2. He beat Hirvonen on every stage and passed the Finn, pulling out an advantage of 20 seconds by stage 13. Further back, though, Germany's infamously dangerous roads were living up to their reputation. Gigi Gali having the scariest off on stage 5. The dramatic crash destroyed his Ford Focus, and the Italian was taken to hospital for an operation on a broken femur. The operation was a success, but Gigi would take no further part in 2008. Jari-Matti Latvala was running 5th when a pace note mistake saw him misjudge a chicane and cause his 2nd big off in successive rallies. This time he was able to continue, but not before he'd plummeted out of the points. It was hard to take in for a very disappointed Finn as he realised the enormity of his mistake.
I don't know. I make stupid mistakes. It's a problem there.
Further down the leaderboard, the Subaru drivers were fighting a battle of their own for 5th place during the first day. Petter Solberg was keen to put his junior teammate in his place, having lost out to him in Finland. The two swapped places 4 times in the first 5 stages. But this battle was effectively ended when Chris Atkinson overshot a junction. It cost him half a minute and left Chris little chance of catching his teammate. So it was Petter Solberg who replaced Latvala in 5th, a position he held for the rest of the weekend. Hirvonen's rally had also hit problems late on the 2nd day. A puncture near the end of the final stage cost him 48 seconds, but more importantly, he fell behind Francois Duval to 4th. The Belgian was back with the Stobart 14, brought in for his tarmac skills. The hope was for him to put some pressure on Loeb, but with so little testing under his belt, this was always going to be a big ask. But with a chance to prove his skills and the chance of taking Gali's place, he put in a blistering display on the final day to hold off Hirvonen and claim his 4th podium finish in Germany. But out front, no one even came close to catching Loeb. He led from start to finish and became the first ever driver to win 7 consecutive rallies at any event in the World Championship.
It has been a great weekend again here for us in Germany. 7th victory in a row. That's incredible, but it's really a good rally for me. Every year everything is going perfectly.
After 19 challenging stages, Sebastian won by an incredible 47.7 seconds, with Sordo in second over half a minute ahead of Duval. Kivinen had to settle for a frustrating fourth. Loeb's victory gave him a 4-point lead over Hirvonen in the Drivers' Championship. Sordo's second place helped him move into third, 3 points ahead of Chris Atkinson. The next round took the cruise to the other side of the world for Rally New Zealand. It was back to gravel for one of the most spectacular and exciting events of the season. And as championship leader, it was Loeb's turn to lead off, sweeping away the loose gravel for those behind. Last year, he lost this rally by 0.3 of a second to Marcus Gronholm, and it was a record he was keen to put straight. But there was an early scare for the Frenchman as he struggled for grip. He was very lucky to escape from that off with just a few lost seconds. Loeb's rival Mikko Hirvonen was next into the stages, and he too found the going slippery. The Finn, though, soon found a good rhythm, and with it the lead in the rally. By the midpoint of the opening day, he was over 9 seconds ahead of Loeb. But the Frenchman hit back in the afternoon loop, closing the gap to less than 1 second before disaster struck on the penultimate stage. He couldn't start his car and missed his slot into the stage. That earned him a 30-second penalty, and he dropped to second, which wasn't a position he was too unhappy to be in, with day 2 offering another 130 kilometres of unswept roads. That left Mikko Hirvonen with no chance of using tactics to pick his road position, as he was now first into the stage and the clear leader of the rally. For the rest of the field, it proved to be just as dramatic. Jari-Matti Latvala had a great start position in 5th and actually led after the opening stage, only to lose it immediately to his teammate. Going into the penultimate stage, he was 3rd and tried to employ tactics by slowing down, so he'd dropped to 4th behind Sordo. But he didn't slow down enough and remained ahead of Sordo by 0.4 of a second. For the Subarus, Rally New Zealand was a struggle. Peter Solberg just couldn't find any rhythm or confidence in the car and finished the opening day down in 7th. And it was worse for Chris Atkinson, who'd started reasonably well, only to roll his Impreza on stage 4. He did manage to keep going, but the engine was damaged and he was forced to pull over and retire. Day 2 and more drama. Loeb started 27 seconds behind leader Hirvonen, but with a clearer line, he soon took big chunks out of the Finn's lead. On stage 12, he took the lead of the rally, but only by 4 seconds, which meant he then decided to employ his own tactics by slowing his C4 before the end of the last stage, dropping him back behind Hirvonen. But Ford then came up with their own tactics, as Jari-Matti blasted through the last stage of day 2 to take the rally lead from his teammate, so he could sweep the road for Mikko and give him a marginally clearer line on the final day. And with day 3 set for a battle royal, the two Fords headed off first into the stages. Loeb was next and pushing hard to retake the lead. But a mistake 3 kilometres in saw the Frenchman spin. That cost him over 10 seconds to Hirvonen, and he dropped to 4th overall. Hirvonen then took the rally lead on the next stage from his teammate Latvala, and more importantly extending his lead over Loeb to 17.5 seconds. But in the penultimate stage, disaster struck for Latvala as the young Finn pushed a little too hard, slipped off the line and whacked the bank. An engine oil leak then forced him to retire for the third rally in a row. That left Mikko without his road sweeper and a lot of pressure to bring his Ford home first. But then more disaster. He whacked the bank, getting a slow puncture. He was left fighting for grip as his rear right started to deflate. To add insult to injury, he then spun. This all cost him around 50 seconds and dropped him down to third. It was a bitter pill to swallow for the young Finn.
Mikko, damage to the front of the car, puncture on the rear. It just must be one of the hardest things.
Definitely not what I needed. But okay. We had a puncture, and then I just had to spin the damage. We just touched the bank with the span, so that's no drama. But game over.
Loeb then pushed as hard as he dared, realising that Hirvonen was in trouble. He not only passed Mikko, but he also blitzed his own teammate to jump from fourth to first with just the super special to go, which he then cruised round to take an unexpected victory.
I'm not happy from what happened to Mikko because he was doing really, really well, and but okay, it's like this. It's a race, but it was really a good battle, and for us it's really perfect for Citroën. 2 first and second with Danny. It's really a great result for both championships.
Further down the field, there was a third Ford disaster as Francois Duval, standing in as a late replacement in the Stobart team for the injured Gigi Gali, worked his way into a credible 5th spot, only to crash out in the same stage as Latvala. The drama did benefit some, especially the Suzukis of Anderson and Gardemeister, who found themselves promoted to 6th and 7th respectively, giving the team their best ever WRC finish. But back in Hamilton, the celebrations were all Citroëns as they took the top 2 spots and increased their lead in both championships. So, confirmation of Loeb's victory. Sordo's second equalled his best result on gravel, whilst Hirvonen had to settle for third. Loeb's win gave him a now daunting-looking 8-point lead over Hirvonen. Sordo also extended his lead over Atkinson to 11. In the manufacturers, Citroën's second maximum haul in as many rallies meant they extended their lead over Ford by a further 12 points to make the gap between them 20. And the next challenge for the drivers was back-to-back tarmac tests, the first taking place on Spain's east coast just south of Barcelona. This surface is Loeb's favourite, handing the world champion a real chance to stamp his authority in the 2008 championship. As leader, he set off first, and as expected, straight into the lead on the opening stage. He never looked back, winning every stage on the opening day. Mikko Hirvonen was next and came to Spain having done some extra tarmac training, but it made little difference as he couldn't get anywhere near the pace of Loeb, and he clearly wasn't too impressed.
My driving was absolutely terrible. Good thing is I know I can do a lot better, so that way it's good we didn't lose too much time, but really bad start, so we need to pick up some speed now.
For Danny Sordo, this was his home event, and as another recognised tarmac expert, he looked most likely to challenge his teammate. But even he couldn't match Loeb's blistering pace. He did at least beat Hirvonen in the opening exchanges to set up a Citroën 1-2 at the top of the leaderboard. Francois Duval joined the full Works 4 team as their tarmac ace, but the Belgians struggled to find a good setup and with it any decent stage times. Instead, he ended up in a battle with his teammate for 3rd spot, and more worryingly, 16 seconds off Loeb's pace after just 3 stages. Behind the top 4, Petter Solberg found some form and performance, storming from 7th to 5th on the opening stages. He was being pushed hard by Estonian privateer Ermo Aava, who was enjoying the tarmac performance of his Citroën C4. He was just a few seconds behind the Subaru man. Jari-Matti Latvala had been demoted to the Stobart team for the 2 tarmac rallies in an attempt by 4 boss Malcolm Wilson to relieve the pressure on his young shoulders after crashes in Finland, Germany and New Zealand. It was a cautious start for the Finn, but by the end of day 1 he was up to 7th and within touching distance of Aava. For Suzuki, the rally was a nightmare. Tony Gardemeister spun on stage 1 and then picked up a puncture later in the day. And then his teammate PG Anderson overcooked a corner after an overly optimistic pace note, sliding down a bank and out of the rally. Day 2, and it was more of the same from Loeb as he continued his stage-winning streak, taking 4 out of 6 and extending his lead to almost 30 seconds. But behind him there were plenty of battles still raging. The 2 Fords of Hirvonen and Duval continued to fight for 3rd. Mikko became the first driver to break Loeb's stranglehold on stage wins as he tried to reel in Duval. But the Belgian proved too fast overall and pulled away from his teammate, ending the day 13 seconds ahead. Petter Solberg was scrapping for 5th spot with Ermo Aava, but only managed to end the day 1.4 seconds ahead of the Estonian.
Opens long, 30, slippy maybe, 6 right minus half long, 120.
Chris Atkinson was a man on a mission on day 2, and he soon caught and passed the cautious Latvala to claim 7th overall. But on the final day, Jari-Matti decided to ditch his cautious approach in an attempt to regain the position, which he duly did with 2 stages to go. It was to be a close finish though, as Atkinson fought back to finish just over a second behind the Finn. Ermo Aava's bid to take 4th from Petter Solberg came to fruition on stage 16. But then on 17, he overcut a corner, damaging his suspension, and he was forced to retire. Mikko Hirvonen was another to start the final day with high hopes, but the choice of a soft tyre for the morning stages meant he lost time to Duval, and the battle for 3rd was effectively over. Fortunately for Hirvonen, Malcolm Wilson asked Duval to let Mikko past on the closing stages in a bid to keep the Finns' ever-receding title chances alive, the Belgian graciously handing over the final podium spot. But for the 3rd rally in a row, it was the 2 Citroëns at the top of the table. Sordo drove incredibly well, but couldn't challenge his awesome teammate. As for Loeb, it almost looked easy as he cruised to his 9th win of the season and reaffirmed his invincibility on tarmac.
Really happy. Really happy also to make to do a 1-2 with Danny for Citroën for the Manufacturer Championship. It's really a good operation.
Confirmation then of Loeb's comprehensive victory. Kievenen's third meant he lost 4 rather than 5 points to his rival, whilst Ermo Ava's late retirement helped all the drivers below Petter Solberg up 1 place. There was no time for any of the crews to rest as the following weekend saw them contest the Tour de Corse. This beautiful Mediterranean island provided more tarmac, but this time it was tight and twisty and precision was the key. Loeb again began proceedings, having extended his championship lead to a daunting 12 points. And it was once again business as usual as he won all 6 of the day's stages. Kievenenen claimed to have found a good setting late on in Spain, and it seemed to be working as he was second fastest on the opening stage, just 4 seconds off Loeb's pace. But it was short-lived as he soon fell away from the charging Frenchman, and his disappointment was there for all to see.
Six seconds. Well,
he's amazing, isn't he?
I can go a lot faster. At least I started to take massive risks, so yeah, he's pretty fast.
Francois Duval was once again in the second Ford, but this time he struggled to match the pace of his teammate. And he too was stunned by the awesome pace of Loeb. Danny Sordo had said he really wanted to beat Loeb in France, and he saw this as his chance. But a third fastest time on the opening stage was clearly not to his liking, as he then pushed too hard into a right-hander, braking too late and slamming his car into the bank. Using Virtual Spectator, you can see how he misjudged his braking point coming into the corner. The red line shows when the cars are braking, and you can see Danny braked 18 metres later than Loeb. Incredibly, that equates to less than half a second, but the consequences were catastrophic. To add insult to injury, the car was deemed by officials too badly damaged to Super Rally, and his weekend was over. Matt Wilson was another to struggle with these Corsican roads, also slamming his car into the bank.
Max left, 30, keep right.
But he was more fortunate than Sordo, escaping with just minor damage. Jari-Matti Latvala, buoyed by a decent finish in Spain, was pushing hard from the start and almost overstepped the mark on the very first stage. He survived to take an early 4th place. Once again, though, he found himself in a battle with the 2 Subarus. This time it was Chris Atkinson who set the early pace. The Australian taking 4th from Latvala on stage 4.
And brake 7 right and damp 3 left. And 3 left.
His teammate Petter Solberg wasn't hanging around either.
It's a 6 left plus. Arblong, keep in.
This moment showing just how hard he was pushing. And on the final stage of day 1, he beat both Latvala and Atkinson, leapfrogging them both to move from 6th to 4th. Privateer Ermo Ava arrived in Corsica full of confidence after an impressive drive in Spain, despite his final day retirement. But once again, Lady Luck deserted the Estonian as he damaged a damper in the very first stage and then incurred a 1-minute penalty for being late into stage 2, pretty much ruining his chances of a decent result. Day 2, and Loeb continued to disappear into the distance, the Frenchman simply in a class of his own on the tight and twisty Corsican stages. Francois Duval in his second rally for the Ford team found some form to take second from his teammate Kievenenen on stage 7. But Mikko was much happier with his car setup and promptly beat the Belgian on the following test to reclaim the position. The pair then traded fastest times, but it was Hirvonen who emerged on top by just over 4 seconds at the end of the second day. The three-way fight for fourth was also hotting up. Jari-Matti Latvala was in fine form at the start of the day, and by stage 9 he'd reeled in and passed Petter Solberg to claim fourth overall. And he took that form into the afternoon loop, stretching his lead over Solberg to 22 seconds. For Chris Atkinson, it was a disappointing day after a promising start. A puncture cost him almost a minute and a half and saw him drop out of contention.
7 left items, cut 5, and cut 6 right press long up.
Things once again were even worse at Suzuki as Tony Gardemeister lost a lot of time with fuel pressure problems.
We don't have fuel pressure. Car is not moving at all.
And then for the second rally in succession, PG Anderson slid off and out of the rally.
Höger 560. Vänster 2 för lång, sten inner.
After all that, it looked like the final day would be a procession as Francois Duval and Mikko Hirvonen were the only two drivers within touching distance, and everyone expected Duval to be told to back off. But then a puncture for Hirvonen on the first stage of the day forced the Finn to pull over and change the tyre. He lost over 2.5 minutes and dropped to 5th behind Petter Solberg. Fortunately for the Finn, Petter then had a puncture of his own on the following stage, handing Mikko fourth.
And 2 left, tightens 1. 1 right plus half long, 10 k's to go. 2 left, tightens 1 plus.
That then left 2 forwards ahead of Hirvonen, and suddenly Malcolm Wilson had to decide whether to use team orders to promote Mikko back to second in an attempt to keep the title race alive. An agreement was reached and Duval checked in 2 minutes early into the final stage, earning a 2-minute penalty and instantly dropping him behind his teammates. Latvala was just over a minute and a half ahead of Hirvonen and checked in 9 minutes late, earning a 90-second penalty. He then slowed at the end of the stage to ensure Mikko passed him and reclaimed second place. But oblivious to all the drama was Loeb, pretty much driving his own rally and eventually winning by a massive 3.5 minutes to claim his 10th victory of the season, equaling his record set back in 2005. So Loeb an easy winner once again, with Hirvonen as runner-up, gifted his position for the second rally in a row. Duval had to make do with third. Loeb's victory meant he increased the gap to 14 points to Hirvonen. It could have been 17 had Duval and Latvala not allowed Mikko to retake second place. In the manufacturers, Ford reduced the gap to rival Citroën by 4 points, but with just 2 events to go, they were still 23 adrift of the French team. So after 13 rounds, it was time to head to Japan. But this time the rally had moved to Sapporo, making it new to everyone, ensuring this would be anything but a foregone conclusion. Loeb arrived with 10 victories to his name, just needing to finish third to claim a record-breaking 5th driver's title. Loeb was first into the new stages and took the cautious approach. A pace note error here in 2007 almost cost Seb the title, and the Frenchman was very keen not to repeat that performance. As a result, he was in a very lowly 6th place after the opening stage.
I really took it easy. Easy is not the right word. It was difficult for me to find the confidence, and so I was not fast.
For Mikko Hirvonen, it was a totally different approach. The Finn knew only a win would do, so it was a case of maximum attack from the off. It was a great start as he beat his rival by 13 seconds and took the rally lead. Jari-Matti Latvala was back in the main Ford team once again, and he powered into second spot. His mission to stay ahead of both Citroëns to at least help Ford keep the manufacturer's title race alive. With this being a gravel event, Francois Duval was back with the Stobart team, and he put in a great performance to take third spot. But it all went very wrong for the Belgian on stage 6 as he pushed a bit too hard, slamming into a barrier. With his co-driver Patrick Pivato badly injured, Duval had to flag down Matthew Wilson to radio for help. Pivato was airlifted to hospital with internal bleeding, a broken pelvis and tibia. Danny Sordo's rally was also short-lived as turbo problems forced him to retire. It was a massive disappointment for the team as his sole mission for the weekend was to score manufacturer points in a bid to see off rivals Ford. So after all the drama of the opening day, Loeb suddenly found himself in the third place he craved, and it was a case of just holding on. Mikko Hirvonen as rally leader began day 2 with a 26-second lead, but he struggled as first on the slippery roads. And the local wildlife didn't help settle his nerves. Latvala began the day second, but only 4 seconds ahead of Loeb, so it was a case of pushing to put some distance between himself and the Frenchman. He did just that, and by the end of the day had also reduced the gap to Hirvonen to just 15 seconds. Further down the leaderboard, Peter Solberg was on a charge as he stormed up from 7th to take 4th from his teammate. But it all came to a sudden end in the gloom of day 2 as the Norwegian hit a rock, smashing his rear suspension. And there was more bad news for the Solberg family as his brother Henning retired on the same stage, also with broken suspension. PG Anderson in his Suzuki worked his way up to an impressive 6th, but he too hit trouble. A puncture forcing him to stop and change the wheel. The time lost saw him drop out of the top 8. So to the final day, but there were still 9 stages between Loeb and his record-breaking 5th world title. With a lead of 1.5 minutes to Atkinson in 4th, the Frenchman knew an error-free run and the title would be his. But one man who seemed to have no pressure was Jani-Matti Latvala as he charged through the morning stages to close to within 5 seconds of rally leader Hirvonen despite some horrific weather conditions. But after a quiet word from team boss Malcolm Wilson, he eased off to make certain of 2nd. That left Hirvonen to cruise to the finish and to his 3rd win of the season. He'd done all he could, now it was just a matter of waiting for Loeb. Further down the field, it was a great end to the rally for home team Suzuki as Tony Gardemeister claimed 5th, his best finish of the season. And PG Anderson in the other Suzuki fought back after his puncture on day 2 to snatch 6th from Matthew Wilson, giving the team by far their best points haul of the season. However, all eyes were on Loeb as he tried to pick his way through the rain-sodden roads. But on the penultimate stage, he lost control of the C4, spinning the car. Fortunately for the Frenchman, he missed all the trees and was able to continue. But the drama wasn't over as the car was struggling with water in the electrics. It was a heart-in-the-mouth finish as he dragged the C4 over the line, holding on to third and claiming a record-breaking 5th world title.
Sebastian Loeb, 2008 World Rally Champion and now a record 5 times World Champion.
It couldn't be more tricky than it was. I had a spin in the stage before the short one at 500 meters from the end. A lot of water, I lost the control and spin in a narrow place, so it was incredible. But now I think it's a great moment. No pressure now. Yeah, perfect.
A third win of the year for Mikko Hirvonen, then Latvala ensuring a Ford 1-2 and a crucial 18 points. But the all-important statistic is that Sebastian Loeb finished third to claim the 6 points he needed to secure the driver's title.
Olivier, congratulations, a fantastic result for Sebastian.
It's quite nice, quite good, and we were really afraid at the end because the car stopped 200 meters before the end.
It's relief that you're feeling now.
No, I'm really happy, especially for Sebastian and for the team.
5 world titles, he's broken every record in the book. He is really a genius.
I'm quite sure he's a genius.
So Loeb's 112 points confirmed him as the champion. Hirvonen could still match that tally, but Loeb's 10 wins meant he would still be champion on the countback system. So with just the manufacturer's title to be decided, the crews headed to Wales for the final rally of the season. Citroën held an 11-point lead, which meant 7 more would be enough to secure the championship. New stages and freezing weather greeted the drivers on the opening day. In fact, the conditions were so bad the organisers had to cancel the first one as it was too icy and deemed too dangerous. Sweet Lamb became the first stage and at just 4 kilometres long should have been a quick sprint, but with the freezing conditions, even the world champion tiptoed his way through. Mikko Hirvonen was next, and he knew that he and his teammate Jari-Matti Latvala needed to claim the top 2 spots. But after a slow start, Mikko decided to push a little harder, and it all went wrong for the Finn as he lost control through the water splash. Mikko just seemed to lose the back end of the car when he hit the water splash at speed. It spun the car off to the left and he clipped the bank, flipping it onto its roof. He then got stuck in the mud and lost almost 4 minutes as the spectators finally came to his aid. But it was a disaster for Ford's title hopes as Mikko dropped to 44th. There was a surprise early leader as the later runners started to find some grip, and he came in the shape of the newly crowned junior champion Sébastien Ogier. The French youngster, rewarded with a drive in a Citroën C4, showed his promise from the outset, but a gearbox problem led to a small off and saw him drop from 1st to 8th. And things went from bad to worse for the young Frenchman when he rolled on day 2. P.G. Anderson was another of the later runners to take advantage as he ended day 1 in 3rd position. He dropped time early on the 2nd day and fell to 6th. But the young Swede continued to impress in the trickiest of conditions, eventually finishing 5th. Francois Duval started cautiously with his new co-driver Denis Girardet, and a high-speed spin didn't help his nerves. But the Belgian never gave up and finished a creditable 6th. Chris Atkinson battled his way up the leaderboard to 6th when he too was caught out by the conditions as he careered into a bank, flipping his Subaru. The damage to the car was devastating, but both Chris and his co-driver Stefan Prevost happily escaped unhurt. Jari-Matti Latvala found some form and confidence as he worked his way up from 4th to take the rally lead. But a puncture on day 2 saw that lead shrink to just under a second over a storming Danny Sordo. The Spaniard, after a quiet start, putting a stunning time to jump from 6th to 2nd, passing his teammate on the way. Caution then became the word as he backed off to allow Loeb to push for the win, safe in the knowledge that Danny would earn enough points to win the manufacturers if he went off. And so the Frenchman went about the task of hunting down Jari-Matti. It started to look ominous for the young Finn as Seb closed the gap to just 2.4 seconds. But Latvala hit back to extend the lead to over 10 before a clutch problem saw him lose time at the end of day 2. That left a thrilling final day. Latvala was out first and there was ice everywhere. The Finn almost lost it all on the opening stage, but somehow escaped with only lost time. Loeb, though, posted fastest time after fastest time until he finally overhauled Latvala on the penultimate stage. But the drama wasn't over as he was hit with a jump start penalty of 10 seconds, which dropped him back to 2.2 behind the Finn. And for a split second, the Frenchman looked ruffled.
We're hearing you've got a jump start.
No. No. Jump start. I think it's wrong, but because I'm sure from my start. Huh? Okay.
So it came down to the final stage. Latvala went first and gave it his all in search of his second ever WRC win.
With 16 Ks, Sebastian's 4.5 quicker than you at the moment.
It doesn't look good. I tried the game as fast as I can, and but better I can't drive. If I'm losing this rally now, it's the better will win.
And then came the champion. He pushed his C4 as hard as he physically dared, taking lines that literally took him to the edge and almost beyond. He beat Latvala by 4.9 seconds to win Rally GB for the very first time, as well as increasing his own record of season wins to 11. And he was clearly very happy.
You've won by 2.7.
Today it was really a good fight, so it was very exciting to fight with Jari-Matti. It was per second every time. Jump start in the stage before. So yeah, finally I tried everything I could in the last one, because for me I started with 2.2 behind and finally we won, so really good.
Loeb's penalty was later removed, increasing his winning margin to 12.7 seconds. Latvala had to settle for second, while Sordo claimed an impressive third. And there was at least a record for Mikko Hievinen, who by finishing 8th became the first ever driver to score points in every round in a season. And there were celebrations for Citroën as Loeb's last gasp victory also ensured that the team completed the double, winning the manufacturer's title. Confirmation of Citroën's win, beating Ford by 18 points. Subaru again finished third, and Loeb's record-breaking 11th win of the season meant he finished 19 points ahead of Hievinen. Sordo was third, 7 ahead of Latvala, whilst Chris Atkinson, despite his off, finished 4 points ahead of his teammate Solberg.